I'm going to make my screen look like your screen if you're a student. So all the extra stuff that I do doesn't show up. So when you log in, you're going to see your course syllabus. I'm going to be posting your course schedule on there as well, so you have a copy of that. The first unit is posted. I will post Chapter 1 recordings. If you don't have your textbook yet, I give you the first couple of chapters access. Looks like everybody has their book, so that's not an issue. If you don't have the workbook yet, same thing. Note slides. You may like to have those. You don't necessarily have to have them. And then lecture note worksheet, which I'll be handing out. Later on, as we get further into the semester, you'll be responsible to print those out yourself, but kind of to follow along to make sure you're getting those important points, either in the reading or in the lecture. And then I've got some Quizlets in there. I like Quizlets. The recordings will go in, and then Chapter 2, and Chapter 3, and Chapter 4. So that's where you're going to find information. Alrighty. Now we can get started. So, as I said, I've got a worksheet for you. And I 3-hole punched it in case you have a binder that you might want to stick it in so you don't lose your papers. One of the keys to success in pharmacy technician is staying organized, because you're going to get a lot of information from both Miss Ashante and myself. All right, so we're going to start with talking about pharmacology. What's the matter, Doll? Oh, her chair?
Yeah,
it won't go up? Do you have to pull up on it? There you go. So the first objective that we're going to talk about is explain why the study of pharmacology is necessary for pharmacy technicians and what's the importance of our role. So what is pharmacology? The study of pharmacy. Almost. What pharmacy is? Okay. Pharmacology is the study of drugs. Okay? Now, that's a component of pharmacy. So, pharmacology doesn't encompass pharmacy, but pharmacy encompasses pharmacology, if that helps you understand. So, pharmacy is the big. It's like the house. And all the rooms have different things. So, pharmacy is, by definition, the art and science of dispensing medicine. Pharmacology, one, it's ology, which tells you it's the study, right, that term. And pharma is a word that means drugs. So it's the study of drugs. That's the most basic definition there is. Now we can expand that definition to be a little bit more inclusive, the study of drugs and their effects on the body, how they're used, that goes on and on. There's a lot of subheadings when it comes to pharmacology. So it could be about how we use drugs to treat things. It could be how drugs can be poisonous. It could be where do drugs come from. It could be how do drugs work. So there's a lot of subcategories under pharmacology. Why is it important for a technician to understand pharmacology? Why do you think?
Because it's what we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives.
Okay. So it has an importance in our jobs.
Let you know what kind of interactions or what should be an expected outcome.
Okay. It helps us understand the medications and their outcomes and what they're doing. Okay. What else? Why are we doing this? Okay, the number one thing about anything in medical health care is patient safety. That is our ultimate goal, to keep our patients as safe as we possibly can. And knowledge is the key to that safety. Right? So the more we know as technicians, the safer our patient will be. The better educated our eyes are, the better we are as a pharmacy team. I had students on their first day of clinicals catch errors. That's pretty cool. And sometimes they've gotten past the pharmacist. So the more educated eyes we have looking at something, the better the chance that somebody's going to catch if something is wrong. Because we all are human. And at some point, I'm going to give you an exercise, not today, where you're going to find out how our mind tricks us. It's just how it works. We sometimes think we see something that's not there, or read something that isn't printed. And it's just kind of how our perception is. And it's just a human trait. So that's why when we have well-educated eyes looking at things, it helps protect our patients. And the better educated we are, the more often, if you kind of know a little bit about a drug, but maybe you don't know the right dosing, something slips past you because you didn't realize it was the wrong dose. And not everything is caught electronically. There's still a human piece in a lot of it. So, now, tell me what you think about your pharmacology knowledge that you're going to get in this class and what your future needs are going to be for pharmacology.
It's going to constantly evolve. You're going to have to keep learning.
You're going to continually learn. This is not a stagnant job. It's not task-oriented where I learn this and I become proficient and that's my job. It's always changing. The medications are always changing. New ones are always on the market. Old ones are being pulled off the market. It's a lifelong commitment to learning in healthcare. So that's also exciting because it doesn't get boring, right? Gives you something new to work on. And I still, next to my chair in my living room, I have a notepad. Because when a new commercial comes on, I'm like, oh, I need to go research this drug. It's a new drug. There's the new diabetic agent, it's magic, I have to write it down. I've got it written down at home. There's that. There's the new gout drug that's out on the market. So a lot of times, I'll get my information from mass marketing, just like you see those commercials. I'm thinking back a little ways, a couple of years ago, when Prolia came on the market, which is used for osteoporosis, and it's a monoclonal antibody. I've never heard of a monoclonal antibody for osteoporosis. I need to go look that up. So I love puzzles. I love learning things. So look at it as an opportunity, something to get excited about, not overwhelmed by. And you can't learn it all at one time, okay? That's why we take it in steps. All right, so pharmacology is the study of drugs and their interactions with living systems, and that includes the chemical and physical properties of the drug. Now, we're not going to get into chemistry. We might when we talk about antacids and how they work with the acid in your stomach. There's medicinal chemistry, there's biochemistry, there's all these other chemistries that they take in pharmacy school that break it down to that. We'll kind of talk a little bit about it, maybe acids and bases, just a little bit. Physical properties, is it a solid, a liquid, or a gas? And that can affect how quickly it'll work in the body. So we'll talk a little bit about physical properties. And that kind of lends itself into dose forms. Toxicology. So what's toxicology? Which is what? What's a toxin? Harmful. Poisons. Okay. You may or may not realize this. There is no safe drug. It does not exist. Every drug has the potential to be toxic or harmful to the body. Nothing safe. So understanding that relative relationship between it being beneficial or therapeutic and when it becomes harmful. Therapeutics. Well, that's a big part of pharmacology. What do we use drugs for? To treat things. That's the main reason. There's a few other reasons we use medications. but primarily to treat something. So when we're talking about deciding what medication or drug to use to treat, that's a section of pharmacology called pharmacotherapeutics. So if you just break the word down, pharmacotherapeutics, what drug to treat? Don't overthink. That becomes a big challenge in this class. A lot of students want to make it much more complicated than it is, and they overthink things. Mechanism of action. Now, this is a term we're going to talk a lot about, and it helps us understand the drug because what it means is how the drug works. So that's the basic, simple definition of what is mechanism of action. We call it MOA, how a drug works. Now, later on, when we get into pharmacodynamics, which is another subcategory of pharmacology, we're going to talk about site of action, where the drug is doing its job. Now, mechanism of action, it would be wonderful if we knew how every single drug works. Sometimes we don't. All we know is they do work. We knew the outcome, but we don't always understand how is that outcome occurring. For the majority of drugs we do, but just be aware that occasionally I'll be like, yeah, we really don't know how this does it. Now, to understand what's happening in the body with these drugs, you have to have an understanding of anatomy, physiology, and pathophysiology, and that's where 109 came in, right? You have to understand how the body's working and functioning, and then what's going wrong to know how the drug is going to fix it. So that's how it all comes together, and that's why 109 is such an important course. Questions so far? How do you feel about these terms? Feel okay with these terms? All right. So technicians have to have a knowledge of pharmacology so that we can properly identify drugs from a patient's profile. Today's technician is not the technician from 20 years ago. You have so many more opportunities in front of you as a technician today that did not even exist. Scope of practice has expanded for technicians. Who can tell me what scope of practice means? Okay, what you can do. Okay? So, let's talk about a different area of medicine. Okay? Let's take it out of the pharmacy. Let's talk about nurses and doctors. They each have a defined scope of practice. The doctor's scope of practice is going to be much broader than a nurse's scope of practice. Right? Can a nurse diagnose? Not if they're an LPN or an RN. Now, if they're a nurse practitioner, it puts them in a different realm. Their scope changes. So when we talk in pharmacy, the pharmacist has the higher level of scope of practice, and a technician falls somewhere under that. Now, depending on what state you live in and work in, some states have much broader scope of practice for technicians than others. I think in Louisiana, now that we have that requirement of education, we're going to see the scope of practice for technicians expand even more greatly than they currently are. And they're pretty good. We're advanced. People don't realize Louisiana is very advanced when it comes to pharmacy practice. We're way beyond some other states. So some of the things that technicians can do now is med history, med listing, they call them, emergency room or ED techs. Different places call it different things. Med rec techs. They go in and they take patient histories in the emergency room or in the patient's admin. And they document the medications that the patients take at home. That used to be something the nurses did. Or maybe a pharmacist would do. They find that technicians have a 97% accuracy overall. A pharmacist's accuracy is approximately 95%, and a nurse's accuracy is approximately 87 to 88%. Why do you think technician accuracy for a patient's history is more accurate?
Because that's what we do.
Because that's what we do. We handle these drugs every single day. A nurse isn't going to see the drugs that patients take at home. They're in the hospital. They're not going to necessarily see the same drugs all the time. They're not going to be familiar with, I fill this medicine 70 times in a shift. I know what the right strength is, or the right dose form is, or the frequency. The nurse is just going to write down what the patient tells them. Do you think the patients fully understand all their medications? I take the white pill for my water, and I take the green one for my thyroid. That's how the patients come into the pharmacy. They don't, and when they do try to pronounce drug names, now if you're on Facebook, there's a few sites that are very amusing. They'll give you like the mispronounced medications all over the place. So, yeah, we get together for meetings and stuff like that, and we're always trying to say, oh, what's the best way that you've heard a patient ask for this medication? So the texts are the ones that we are there. Now, if you know what you're looking for, if you understand your drug names, you're going to spend less time looking for them. Yes, everything's barcoded today, blah, blah, blah. People still put stuff back on the shelf in the wrong place, right? So my other life, I was in food service. So I've been a bartender, I've been an expediter in a restaurant. You know, there's certain ways that a speed rack of alcohol is set up. There's a certain way that an expedition line is set up. The sauces are in a certain order, because when you're filling, you've got to do things quickly. If somebody puts the salsa back where the ranch dressing is supposed to be, all of a sudden you're filling the wrong thing. Or you pick up tequila instead of rum. Well, there goes your hurricane, right? So, putting things where they belong, knowing where they belong, making sure they're stored properly. So inventory control is a task that technicians are responsible for. Not putting something on the shelf that should be in the refrigerator. Oh, now we've compromised the medication, we have to throw it away. Every time we have a loss of medication, it costs money. There goes our raise. So as technicians, we're thinking economics as well. A lot of people aren't. I never threw anything away. I would unit dose in the hospital, and there'd be one tablet left over, and some of the other techs would toss it in the garbage, and I'm like, oh, that's fine, raise. That's getting dispensed. That's not just because you have one left over. That's going out. Reducing dispensing errors. Selecting proper warning labels. Now, we don't do that as much as we used to in the past. My first job in a pharmacy, we didn't have a computer. All the chains had computers. It's not like computers didn't exist. I'm not talking Fred Flintstone days, okay? We had computers. My pharmacy did not. It was an independent pharmacy. The pharmacist was still typing labels on a typewriter, which meant we had to still apply those auxiliary labels. So we had to know which drugs cause drowsiness, which ones could be taken with food, which ones did you have to avoid dairy, all of those things. Now today, they print out with your labels. Recognizing interactions. Again, the computer will often flag us. It's called a drug utilization review. It'll know things in the patient's history, maybe other medicines they're taking, maybe something is a disease state that they're not supposed to take, the dose is abnormal. Where do you think a challenge could come in with this? If the computer's going to warn us these things, where do you think there might be a challenge? Okay. Well, hopefully that's going to tell us. Could be. What's true about computers? What if it's not in there right? What if it's not been put in there at all? Patients go to multiple pharmacies. People who go to multiple doctors may use a pharmacy that's closest to their doctor's office, maybe not. Maybe CVS is close to one doctor's office and Walgreens is close to another. Their systems won't interact. We're not going to know what's in there if the patient doesn't tell us. So we might not be able to catch all those things. It's nice in an ideal world that information will be in the computer. But we have to have the patient's medication history. So when you get a new prescription or a patient comes in for a refill, you want to ask, hey, have you started any new medications recently? If it's a new patient, you've got to get a complete history. So one of the things, we can't walk up to a patient and say, what drugs do you take? Because what kind of inclination does that term mean to a patient? You're taking something illegal, right? You're taking drugs. Drugs to us, medication, drugs, it's interchangeable for us. But when you're talking to somebody in the general public and you say, what drugs do you take? They're thinking street drugs. They're not thinking medications. So we ask, well, what medications do you take? So what do you think they tell us? They don't, well, they're going to tell you what prescriptions. Right? They're going to tell you prescription medications. But a lot of times they're not thinking about things that are over the counter. Right? Patients, they're very segmented in their information. The majority. You're going to have some that are going to be well informed and they're going to give you a comprehensive list because maybe they're involved in healthcare or they've got a family member that's been through this kind of thing. But the majority of the public, when you ask them medications, they're going to tell you what they're taking by prescription. So then we say, are you taking anything over the counter? Oh yeah, I take Aleve, or I take an aspirin a day, or I take Zantac for my stomach, or Prevacid. Because all of these could have interactions with the medications that are in their profile. Then, well, do you take any nutritional supplements, vitamins? Oh yeah, I take multivitamin, and I take saw palmetto, or I take ginseng, or I take this, or I take that. We didn't ask that. We're not going to have enough information to be keeping our patients safe. But we have to kind of think for them. We don't want to be the type of tech that's like, let's see if the patient can answer the right question or ask the right question today for me to really help them. We have to help them think. And then we're doing a good job. So it helps us get the appropriate drug for the patient, the proper dose and dosage form. So if we do get a flag, hey, this medicine should be taken with this, we can turn it over to the pharmacist, let them know that this interaction came up. They can talk to the patient or talk to the doctor and get them on a safer drug. Because the doctor may not have a complete history, and the doctor is not a drug expert. So they might not realize that these two drugs can't be taken together, that the patient's already on. That's the pharmacist's role. We also want to make sure they're taking them at the right time. So we have 6 rights for the patient. And this is something I did put in your notes, but I should have. Okay? Fill in a prescription. You got to have the right patient, right? The right drug, the right dose, the right form, the right route, and the right time. So there's 6 rights. In nursing, there's 7 because they do documentation. So when your patient comes in, and you're going to learn about this in pharmacy practice and processing prescriptions, you don't just ask their name, but you verify date of birth, address, phone number, things that are unique to that patient. Because, how many Thomas Landrys do you think there are in New Orleans? Right? Every place has their own set of last names that are pretty prevalent around, right? So you don't want to just say, okay, you're Thomas Landry, fine, here. Well, you gave it to Thomas J instead of Thomas L, kind of thing. So you want to find something that's an identifier. We want to make sure we gave them the right medication, but in the right dose form. We can't substitute things. We can't substitute a tablet for a capsule without a doctor's okay. We can't substitute a suppository for a suspension. So we have to make sure, is it in the right form? Is it in the right dose? Is it going to be taken by the right route? we want to make sure they understand. I tell a story when we talk about dose forms about my pharmacist who was my teacher told me about a story that this mom who lived in Mexico, who came from a small village where they didn't have medicine as we know it. They did a lot of homeopathic medicine. So the little girl had an earache or an ear infection. So usually they would put some drops in the ear and that kind of thing, or put some salve. And the mom came back after a day or so and said she couldn't get any more tablets in the little girl's ear. Because they weren't used to what, if that's where the trouble was, that's where they put the medicine. We can't expect our patients to know. We would think it would be common sense. Their own biases prevent that. I've even seen healthcare workers like CNAs not know to take a suppository out of the wrapper. And we have patients every day that swallow suppositories, some with the wrapper still on, and have to have surgery to get the foil removed. So just because we think it's common sense doesn't mean our patients fully understand. It's not that they're stupid, it's not that they're dumb, they're just not educated to the proper way to do it. If it's something they've never used before, they just need to be told how to do it properly. And so right route, and then are they taking it the right time of day? Are they not taking it enough? Are they taking it too much? Those kinds of things. Questions so far? Already, am I making you think? Wow, that's a lot going on there. All right, so drugs. Okay, first off, drugs are my life, and I take drugs seriously. I'm silly, I tell bad jokes, it's all good. So what is a drug? A medication. A drug is anything that makes a change in the body. Okay? That's why to us, drug is a general term, where to some people it has a negative connotation. But, so if it changes any function in a human or animal, we dispense for animals. Who can think of a legal drug that probably most of you have every day? Caffeine. Caffeine is a drug. It changes in the body. It's a stimulant. For some people, it's also a gastric irritant. So it causes stomach ulcers in some patients. Nicotine. In excess, it can be dangerous. Alcohol is a drug. Anything that makes a change in the body is considered a drug and can potentially have an interaction with any other drug. Now, in our purpose of drugs, we want to use them to diagnose. So maybe we need to see if somebody's pituitary gland is working properly. They get some hormone to see how their body reacts to that, to see if it's working properly. To treatment, that's the main reason. I have an infection, I have a respiratory infection, I take penicillin, I'm better. To mitigate is kind of to control, palliative, manage symptoms kind of thing. Cure goes with treat in my mind. Some things can be cured, some things can't. We can treat diabetes, we can't cure it, but I can cure a respiratory infection. If you want to get down to the nitpicking of those terms, to me, cure falls under treat. And then prevent. Who can give me an example of medication that prevents? Okay, vaccines. Really important. I am such a get on my soapbox about people should be vaccinated person. Anti-vaxxers need to be put on an island somewhere where they can't make anybody else sick. There is no proven statements to all of the things that anti-vaxxers want to argue. They've been proven wrong. There was actually a new article about a little child that suffered a stroke after having the measles because they weren't vaccinated. That's one of the most amazing things to happen in modern medicine.
No, the thing with the measles. I had just heard that there was some new, even stronger or worse measles out there because people would stop getting it anymore.
Right. We've almost eradicated things, and then because somebody decides that they don't need to do that, we get stronger strains. And that's resistance and a whole thing, and we'll talk about a lot of that when we get to vaccinations and just antibiotics in general or anti-infectives in general. But polio is pretty much eradicated. They don't even give polio vaccine anymore. I had a polio vaccine as a kid. They don't give them anymore. Smallpox. They don't give smallpox vaccines anymore. You know, unless you're in the military. But I'm of the age where I got a smallpox vaccine. So, but you know what? They didn't have a chickenpox vaccine when I was a kid. So I had the chickenpox. And as I get older, I just keep thinking, how long before I get shingles? But people who are vaccinated against chickenpox aren't going to get shingles as an older person. Or even sometimes younger people get shingles. So there's so many different things that we can do. Now, not only prevent disease, but also prevent other conditions. Birth control. It doesn't prevent a disease, but it prevents a condition. It's prophylactic. Now, one of the terms in your book is pharmacognosy, which is where drugs come from, and it's the study of the natural origin of drugs. Just don't worry a whole lot about that. It's just a funky term. Now, when we talk about medications and drugs, we have to understand that no drug has only one effect. There's no perfect drug. Now, we're getting there. Targeted therapies, we're so much closer. It's exciting what's happening in medicine today. Because at some point, we are going to have something that will go to whatever it's trying to treat, only treat that, and not have other side effects. That's exciting. But right now, we don't. So that means that every drug is going to have a potential side effect. Something we don't want to happen, or it could be not so bad, or it could be very harmful. So we look at, what extent is that? So a side effect is generally something that's unwanted, but not really harmful, where an adverse effect is adverse, it's bad. So Benadryl. Everybody knows about Benadryl, right? Tell me a side effect of Benadryl.
Drowsy.
Makes you sleepy. Is that going to hurt you?
Mm.
Only if you're driving when you're using it, right? The drug's not going to hurt you. The result of not being safe while taking the medication can hurt you. In fact, some people take Benadryl to help them go to sleep. And some over-the-counter sleep aids have Benadryl in them as the sleep aid. So in that case, it's actually the therapeutic quality out of the side effect. But if something could cause you to have a heart attack if you take it, or give you congestive heart failure, or high blood pressure, well, those are adverse effects. Those have a more serious weight to them. So we have to think about what's best for the patient. We always want to balance the treatment with the results. So I already talked about the therapeutic effect, so the side effects. So our goal is to pick the most safe. So all drugs are relatively safe when taken as directed. Now, over-the-counter products are supposed to be safer for the general public if they're following the instructions on the box. They don't necessarily need clinical oversight. Well, that doesn't always work. Have you ever heard of the drug Bengay? Okay. So what do we use Bengay for? Sore muscles, right? You put a little on. What happens when you put it on? It gets hot, right? Well, it's a vasodilator. It gets blood flowing to those muscles to help those muscles start to relax a little bit. And that's where the heat comes from, is that blood comes to the surface. It feels warm. All right? Some of the things it tells you on the package. Don't apply heat. It's already hot. You put heat on there, you can get a burn. Don't wrap. Now, the ingredient in Bengay is methyl salicylate. What's that sound like? Salicylate. acetylsalicylic acid. Aspirin. Okay? So Bengay is supposed to be topical. If we wrap it, that aspirin absorbs through the skin and becomes contained. Aspirin can cause toxicity. Salicylate toxicity and poisoning can cause ringing in the ears. That's a symptom if you've got too much aspirin. It's been probably about 10 years now. There was an athlete, a high school athlete on Long Island, who was using approximately 3 tubes of Bengay a day. She was slathering it all over her body and then wrapping saran wrap. She died from the aspirin poisoning. The parents sued the company and won. Even though it said on the box, don't apply more than this often, don't cover, don't do. So we can't control people, even when we give them the best directions. Because it's a litigious society.
Would it cost more to fight it?
I'm sorry?
It would probably cost more to fight
It crazy stuff. Yeah. So people, I mean, the person who won because they burned themselves on their McDonald's coffee. You know, McDonald's has to put a warning label on their coffee cups. Maybe hot. Common sense is out the window in today's society. But that's what we have to realize. If they're taking their medicines properly, or if they're not taking, like if they're taking their narcotic and swinging back, 5 Jack Daniels, and they don't wake up the next morning, these are the things we can't always control our patients. Now, new medications are always being developed. Old medications may be coming off the market, or they might find, long-term research shows that there's a lot more dangers to this medicine than we were able to see in the short term of the approval process. So some drugs we find and then we pull them from the market. So as a technician, we have to be aware of these kinds of things. When we're looking at medication selection, that risk to benefit ratio. If you don't have this medicine, then what could happen? Is the benefit greater than the risk? And that comes into play like with babies and pregnancies and things like that, as well as certain disease states. And that's a patient's decision to make.
So is that like chemotherapy?
Yep, chemo is a great example of assessing risk to benefit management. Will the disease kill me or will my medicine kill me? And, can I live without this medicine? So there's a number of different medications that are we have to look at that way. And we'll talk more about that in Chapter 3. So, talking about chemotherapy, this is another one of those terms that means different things. Okay, what do you think when you see this term? Cancer. Okay? To me, chemo means chemical, and therapy means to treat. So it's using a chemical to treat something, which means a drug. So any drug therapy technically is chemotherapy. However, most commonly we think of it as cancer-related. But chemotherapy is a more specific, just a very general term. But we do usually use it in a common reference to mean drugs that are used to treat cancer. We will further define cancer chemotherapy under anti-neoplastics, immunomodulators. There's some other groupings of those types of medications and how they actually do what they do. So all drugs used in treatment technically are chemotherapy. All right. Where do drugs come from? Labs. Good. Plants. Animals. Jellyfish. Could be an animal.
They're synthesized.
Okay, synthesized would be labs. Okay, from the bark of a willow tree. Certain chemo drugs. Paclitaxel comes from the bark of a Pacific yew tree. Digitalis comes from the foxglove plant. Okay? Animals. Jellyfish.
Something about a memory drug.
Oh, that's one of those commercials.
Yeah.
Insulin.
Is fish oil?
Yeah, it could, I guess. I don't know how they extract it, but thyroid. Farmer thyroid comes from the thyroid of a pig. It's dried out and ground up. Insulins, heparins, have come from animal sources. We generally don't use them as much today. We use genetically modified or bioengineered drugs. How about minerals? Potassium, calcium, magnesium, selenium, chromium. They all have a benefit in our body. Gold. We use gold to treat rheumatoid arthritis. Comes in an injection. It also comes in an oral formulation. Does it cost a lot? I don't know. But calcium, you got brittle bones, take some calcium, right? Vitamins fall into the mineral category. Alright? So we've got those natural resources, the plants, the animals, the minerals. Then we have synthesized. Lab created. What kind of medications come out of a lab? Acetaminophen, Tylenol. It's a chemical creation. Fentanyl. You hear about that on the news a lot with the opiate crisis, right? Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. Opioids are opiates. An opioid comes like an opiate, but an opiate is actually from a plant, like morphine and codeine and caffeine. Those are all plant resources. So we have those synthetic drugs, meperidine, Demerol, fentanyl, Tylenol, antibiotics. A lot of them are synthetically made in a lab. We don't grow them in a petri dish anymore to make them. Now, the viral stuff, like vaccinations, monoclonal antibodies, immunomodulators, some of the things that cause blood cells to reproduce, those are bioengineered drugs. Some of our new cancer treatments, TNF inhibitors, tumor necrosis factors used for rheumatoid arthritis, for psoriasis, for autoimmune disorders, blood clot busters that we use when somebody has a heart attack and has a blood clot that's blocking the blood flow. Those are all bioengineered. Those are modified DNAs or RNA. Now, the thing when you hear bioengineered drug, most of them are refrigerated and they're expensive. So we want to make sure we're handling them properly. But those are some of the places that these drugs come from. So we got minerals. Whoops. So it's like 20 questions, right? Is it bigger than bread box? You got your minerals, your plants, your animals, your synthetic, and your bioengineered or biologic agents. Now, last semester, if you took drug classifications, we talked about how do we name drugs. So nomenclature means naming. So all drugs have a chemical component, but we don't use their chemical names. They're complicated. It follows the IUPAC naming system, generic names, and then we have proprietary or trade names. So a chemical name, it comes from the chemical structure. It defines that chemical structure. A scientist, a chemist, when they're given a chemical name, could actually draw out that molecule. My chemistry is not that current. A generic name, which is the most commonly used in healthcare. It's the name that we all want to use. It's not proprietary. Nobody owns it. It's the blanket name. I think of it like shoe. Right? What do you wear on your foot? A shoe. Well, what does that mean to anybody? It's something that covers your foot. If I say a sneaker, we get a little closer in what the appearance of that shoe might look like versus a pump, right? We got a sandal. Well, if I say Nike, what do y'all see in your head? You see a little swoosh, right? If I say an Air Jordan, you got, right? We all have a picture. If I say Adidas, you see those little two stripes. There's Keds. Oh, if I say Converse, oh, the weight, we all have a picture. Those are brand names, but they're all sneakers. Nobody owns the word sneaker. Now, it's recognized by the United States Pharmacopoeia and National Formulary. So this is a list of all the drugs that are good in the U.S. Has to be approved by the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, or the CDER, and it helps set standards. So we have a challenge in medicine where we have sound-alike names, look-alike names, they're spelled the same, spelled similar, they sound similar, it causes confusion. And they came out with this and said, we need to kind of regulate that a little bit better. Also, that helps give us drug stems to help identify classifications. And then we have the United States Adopted Naming Council, which helps select that non-proprietary. Although nobody owns it, they kind of have one of the final says. Because generally, the first company that's making it kind of picks what the generic name will be in a certain process of how things are supposed to be named. Now, not only does the USAN have to say it's okay, but then the FDA has to say it's okay. And sometimes they'll come out and they'll change the drug name because it's too close to something else. Now, the trade name, it's meant to be memorable. A lot of times it'll help tell us, well, what's this drug used for? If I tell you the drug name, brand name is Gas-X, you kind of have an idea what that's for, right? It helps stop gas. It's also known as a brand name. It's got a trademark. It's proprietary. Only one company can use that name. They own it. Now, if they're given that trademark, they get a patent, and they get 20 years to sell that drug to make some of their money back. Why are drugs so expensive? It takes a while to develop them, and we have to pay for all the ones that don't make it to market. Those people aren't working for free. All those scientists that are developing all those drug studies, those people aren't doing it for free. And those chemicals to make them, they aren't free. So the ones that make it to market have to pay for the ones that don't make it to market. And that's why they have that time to recoup some of that money back and don't always lose it out. Now, after that time, it usually becomes generic, unless it's a specialty drug with a very limited patient population. Then they might have an extended time where they're the only company that can sell it. Once it becomes generic, now we have market competition. Nobody can ever sell it by that other name, but they can make their own name for it. Why do we have Wellbuprofen? Because Walgreens calls ibuprofen Wellbuprofen. But nobody else can go sell Wellbuprofen but Walgreens. But you can buy Advil, Motrin, and ibuprofen just about anywhere. So when that patent ends, others can do it. Now, a generic equivalent, it has to have the same active ingredient as the original drug. It can have different inactives, which means there might be a slight variation in how that works in the body, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about those forms. It can receive an A rating if it's not a significant difference. So it's basically the same thing. So I have bad allergies. I buy fexofenadine over the counter because it's cheaper than buying Allegra. Same thing, works as equal. For some patients, there might be some variations, and for some medications, we'll talk about those specifically, that there's going to be changes that are going to be significant enough that the patient needs to stay with that specific brand or generic brand that they're using. And I did not write this slide that says it's always less expensive than brand name drugs, because about a year and a half ago we had a real problem where the generics were actually coming in more expensive than the brand name drugs. So you've probably maybe seen in the news, there's been some real challenges with drug manufacturers and they're charging. Because most of your insurance are going to cover generic, But then the generic manufacturers were raising their drug prices. So it was actually cheaper to get the brand, but the insurance wasn't letting you get brand. So it's kind of a scheme. All right. We're about to wrap this up. We're not going to have an exit ticket today because I haven't gotten through everything. But we have time. We're going to get there. Name that drug. One of my favorite games. All right. Well, I see an alcohol on there. I see an acetyl group on there. There's a nitrite group. I got a benzo. I got a ring. Yeah. So, as a chemist, they would know that that is N-acetyl-para-aminophenol. So, when's your patient going to come in and say, I need N-acetyl-para-aminophenol? No. We don't use chemical names. Now, we do use the abbreviation APAP, which represents the chemical name. It takes the A from acetyl, the P from para, the A from amino, and the P from phenol. We know this as acetaminophen, which is also brand name Tylenol. Aspirin is ASA. All right. So the other thing that I'm seeing here, okay, we got oops, go back. Give me. Tylenol comes from the chemical name too. They put part of acetyl and phenol. Tylenol. I love puzzles. Stuff like this is cool. So what we're going to learn trade and generics. So drug classification started you on this road, and we're going to take it to the next step. Now, the drug stem. This is where I'm going to leave you off. Drug stem can help us identify a little bit more about the drugs, and this is where we're going to pick up on Wednesday. Get through the rest of the 45 slides. We're almost halfway there. But we use a little extra time to go over the stuff for the course. Before we leave today, are there any questions? Read Chapter 1. Get started on Chapter 2. You've completed your first day. Oh, before you go, I have some presents for you.